Hello, contractors and business leaders. Dominic Caminata here, CEO of GRA University and industry-leading sales trainer. Let me ask you all a question. Are you a home improvement contractor feeling stressed, overwhelmed, and burdened by endless responsibilities? Are you currently experiencing the chaos of a rapidly expanding organization and not sure exactly how to take the next steps? The nonstop management of your staff, the time investment of ensuring consistent quality, and constant struggling with inefficient processes can leave most homeowners feeling overworked and honestly unhappy. As many of you know, the home improvement industry is still very much, in my opinion, the wild, wild west. It's one of the most fragmented major industries left in America, and a lot of people are left just to shoot from the hip. A lot of people tend to make things up as they go along. And one thing my mentor Rick Grosso always preached to business owners all over the country is there's a reason why about 85% of franchises succeed, and yet almost 85% of home improvement companies fail. It's the processes, systems, and procedures that make all the difference. And here's a fact that everyone needs to understand. Businesses cannot survive in this dynamic industry without workable systems and well-documented processes to support them. Developing standard operating procedures and systems can seem like a very daunting and overwhelming task, and many business owners don't know where to begin. And it's for this reason I'm absolutely thrilled to death about today's educational webinar. Today I have the honor of being joined by Adi Klevit, who's the CEO and co-founder of Business Success Consulting Group. And she is going to share how to optimize your home improvement business with proven processes and systems that actually work. In this webinar, we're going to discuss in depth how home improvement companies can design, document, optimize, and implement proven and efficient processes and procedures. So Adi, first I just want to thank you so much for taking time out of your day to invest in the education of our audience. And of course, on behalf of everyone at GRA University, we really appreciate the partnership. So first off, how you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you, Dominic, for the wonderful introduction. It's so true about everything you said there about processes and procedures and the importance of it. And I am also very honored and thrilled for our partnership.
Excellent. And just kind of starting off for those watching right now that maybe don't know Business Success Consulting Group or you personally, just tell us a little bit about your journey, how you became the co-founder and CEO of your company, and kind of the inspiration that caused you to tackle this specific challenge that home improvement companies are facing.
Absolutely. So, I am an industrial engineer. That is my background. I've been doing this for over 30 years. I love processes. I love writing processes, improving processes. I love organizing. I like putting order into things, right? I mean, that's my personality, but I'm not obsessed with it. I also love people. I love communication. So the combination of those two, that's what attracted me to study and then work as an industrial engineer, because it basically puts together the science, the orderliness, the organization, the systems, but also understanding people and helping them be more productive and more efficient. So that's really the why behind why I do what I do. And I worked at different places throughout my career. I am an entrepreneur at heart. I started actually working when I was 16. I started my first business, actually 15 maybe, and then started my own business, my little tutoring business, and I did different things. And I started working as an engineer, and then I'm not going to go over my entire career, but I started to.
No, I'm just curious though, and yeah. I don't mean to chime in, but It's very interesting to me because it's unusual that I find somebody that is this passionate about processes and procedure. I'm just curious, and again, we don't have to talk about your whole life story, but is this something that since you were a child, you really liked order, like organization of things and make sure everything was in a process? Did you have any experiences as a child you can recall where you knew that was something that was important to you?
It's a really good question, but I think my call, or like what I really experienced, was really teaching and working with people and getting them better. I mean, that's my number one, right? That's why I started this tutoring business and helping. It's also creating order, right? I mean, it's creating order in their minds because there was so much confusion. I go like, all right, well, I was tutoring math mostly, and I really like that, putting order, like understanding problems, right? Yeah. Understanding solutions. So again, it's not like this obsession that everything has to be in place and it's in its right place, although I like it, I enjoy it. And I'm sure a lot of people enjoy being in an orderly environment as opposed to in a chaotic and confused environment. And I enjoy where things are in the right place and are organized. And I like organizing my house, and I like going to the Container Store, but it's not this obsessive, oh my gosh, now if something moves, I can't move, right? No, but it's more putting that order, that organization, and helping people through that process. So I think that is more what I recall, but it's a great question. And
Yeah, I mean, I definitely need some help with you personally, because I admittedly am not an organized guy, and my wife yells at me all the time about it because I don't put things back in their place. Right? There's a place for everything. Put everything in its place. I admittedly need to work on that, and obviously
we'll work on that. We will see each other in person in November. I will help you with that. No problem.
Yeah, my wife will be there, so you can
Oh, she and I we'll talk, and then we'll work.
Give her the peace of mind. Hey, we're working on it. Just so you're gonna have a better husband by the end of it. so it's good
That's
stuff.
hilarious.
So
well, let's fast forward. You asked me the question how I started Business Success Consulting Group and why.
Yes.
So I was working. I mean, I started 2 businesses. I worked there. I also managed some businesses for with a partner, and then in 2011 I decided, okay, this is a point in my career that I really want to do what I feel like it's my call. It's like help people, help them grow their companies. I'm really good at it. Let's help. And I started the business, and with the idea of just doing general business consulting. It was kind of like, I would call it spaghetti against the wall, like whatever sticks, it's like, do they need help with this? They need help with that, whatever they need. I had a lot of tools and a lot of knowledge. And then I saw that one thing that I will tell my clients is you need processes. Okay. So a week will go by and processes are not written. Well, we really need to document this, because without it, you're not going to scale, you're not going to grow. And I saw that they just do not have the time to do that. So I asked one of my clients, well, how about if we actually document it for you? Go, absolutely, that'll be great. So that's where I realized that niche is so needed, because we are working with fast growing companies that are lacking consistency. Yep. The owner or the key people are always go, 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 go. They either do not have the know-how, or they do not have the time to document. So we basically provided a solution of like, we are this arm of the company where we come in, we document everything for you. We create these beautiful training manuals, very clearly written, that can be used. And then we also train your staff on it, and we make sure that they're followed by all. And I saw that is needed. It was needed. It was wanted by our clients. So you know what? This is what we're going to do. We're going to basically concentrate on a done-it-for-you company where we create, document, optimize, and implement processes and procedures. So the business can actually scale, can actually grow, and the business owner can actually have the freedom that they desire.
Yeah, I can relate to your story like 100%, because similar, when I founded GRA University, my thought was, I'm just going to be a world-class sales trainer and train people all over the country and make a huge difference. So very general, thought in mind as to what I was going to do. But as I got done training some of these companies, I'd get them motivated and pumped up. But then I realized like they don't have any in-home presentations or any of the tools that I talk about all the time to actually execute. So then we started creating presentations for clients, so they actually have a foundation that their sales team can use in the home, so success is replicatable, predictable, and duplicatable. And then I'm like, well, we're building these presentations. I need to train them on how to use the presentation, right? Because just like any tool, it's only as good as how you use it. So then we get into presentation creation, and we actually coach their team when I'm at the kitchen table. Here's how you use it with scripting and everything. And then I'm like, okay, the sales team has the tools they need. They know how to use the tools. But now the sales leaders, how do the sales leaders take their team and all these tools and use them to command them in the most efficient manner? That's the optimization, right? So very similar to you, it's like I got into the industry knowing that I had a lot of knowledge and wisdom to share. I could do a lot of damage, but I never knew like how that was going to evolve. And kind of in a similar fashion, now it's like a whole suite of solutions. So they have everything they need from top to bottom foundationally to actually execute.
Absolutely. That I can totally relate. And it is, it is something that as business owners you learn. I mean, you observe the market. It's kind of like a market research, but it's kind of like you find what niche what is needed, and then you fill out that niche, and that's how you become successful in your area.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, Rick Grosso, I mean, he kept it very simple. He's like, find a need and fill it, find a need and fill it. And obviously, under promise, over deliver, make sure you're exceeding expectations. And that's what I've been hearing, especially with you now. Kind of understanding the challenge that all of our viewers can relate to. Again, you work with companies all over in multiple different industries. What are some of the most common challenges that you're currently seeing with home improvement contractors, or actually just most businesses alike, when it comes to managing their businesses? The reoccurring challenges. You kind of alluded to that with your inspiration for Business Success Consulting Group and your services. But kind of getting more in depth on that subject, what are the most common challenges you see where people are like, I need to get organized, I need to get this business with the right systems in place, otherwise it's just not going to work?
Absolutely. And I'm going to go through it. I mean, there is even a slide for it, and then we can discuss them. So, we have the owner is wearing all the hats, especially in the home. And by the way, we work with many industries, but we also work with many contractors and the trades and home improvement. So we have a lot of experience in that area. We work with hundreds of contractors. So this is what I found is the common denominator or the common challenges that a home improvement contractor faces. So it's owner wearing all the hats. You're the estimator, you're the project manager, you are everything. The question is like who to hire, how to delegate, how to train. That's definitely a challenge. Okay, I know I'm wearing all the hats. Who am I going to hire next? And if I hire them, where am I going to find the time to train? And how am I going to train them?
Yep.
How to ensure consistency. I hear the word consistency a lot, and that's why those are the challenges is like, you hire people, but that you are, that your quality control is there. How do you actually achieve the consistency of your work? And that's not just contractors. Every business owner deals with it. I mean, we're all dealing with it, but it's how to do that. That's a challenge. How to monitor what is going on. Okay, so let's say when I had like 2 employees, I knew, and I can see what's going on. I visited every job site. I can see what's happening. Now you have many employees. Maybe you have 50 employees. You have many projects. How do you know really what's going on? That's a challenge. Yeah. The company knowledge residing in key people's heads, that's a challenge because let's say you started a company, you had an office, an admin, and then you had one project manager, but now you grew, but those people are the ones who develop the processes. And you might think that your listeners some of you can think, oh, but I don't have processes. Well, yes, you do. We all have processes. You might not have them documented, but if you think about it, when we wake up in the morning, we all have the process of what we do. We go and make coffee, probably the same every single day. Maybe sometimes we have it differently. Even if we drive to a coffee shop, we are, because otherwise we have to spend too much time reinventing. But when the knowledge resides in people's heads, that's a problem.
That's such a risky thing for any business, right? Because if that person gets disgruntled and leaves, it's all of those processes and systems that they developed off of potentially years and years of habit forming and systems, like you said, that work for them, the routines that they're accustomed to, that also leave with them. And for a contractor or a business owner to try to find somebody that has similar knowledge or can plug right back in, it's just such a risky thing. And I've seen companies, frankly, in the last year where there's been a mass exodus of key leadership and the companies went bankrupt. So because the key leaders...
Dominic, also, it doesn't have to be the exodus too. It's the unexpected. I'll give you an example. I had a client that, the accounts, it was pretty complex accounting system. And the person that was doing their accounts receivable, she was the only one who knew how to do it, right? But she, unfortunately, she had a medical emergency where she had to go into an emergency surgery. And there was basically, and she had to recover for 4 to 6 weeks. So maybe when she was, a little bit better, she was able to help, but there was a whole week, nobody knew what they're doing. Yeah. And that is a risk. Anyway, another challenge, which I'm sure a lot of our listeners are going to, our viewers are going to relate to, is can't step away from the business. You can't really, and even if you say, well, I'm taking a vacation, but are you really taking a vacation? I mean, I
Yeah.
just spoke to one of my clients. This is actually, he's a contractor. They do windows, and he was going actually on a vacation or on a retreat where they don't allow cell phones. He was having like withdrawal syndromes. I'm telling you, it was
It's
amazing
tough.
to see it. And he was like, "What am I gonna do? What am I gonna do?" And I go like, "Okay, so what?" And he has things documented. We helped him organize his business. He has managers. He has a leadership team. He has people that are taking care of what's going on. But I asked him, I go, "Tom, what is the worst thing that can happen to the business if you're not there for 10 days and not in communication?" And he kind of like calmed down and he looked and he goes, "You know, nothing." And I go,
That's awesome.
"Exactly."
What a good feeling that must be, like, and how many of you watching this? That's a great question. Maybe we should have a poll question. How many viewers watching this webinar right now could leave their company for 10 days without skipping a beat, where the company continues to run on all cylinders? And I don't know what it is. Sometimes when an owner steps away, performance increases with certain people because maybe they micromanage too much and their team finally has the freedom and liberty to kind of perform at the optimal level. But yeah, I mean, that right there, I can tell you a story that happened to me at the beginning of this year. There's this company I was working with where, and this is more of a sales-oriented dilemma, but it's still exactly what you're explaining, where their sales leader was single-handedly closing sales for their staff over the phone 70% of the time. So 70% of the sales that were made by their team was the sales leader closing them over the phone. And then that sales leader went on vacation for 10 days. And guess what happened to sales performance during those 10 days? It absolutely plummeted. They couldn't close the door with the wind behind them because instead of having the training and the processes and the systems to be empowered to do it on their own accord, they were depending on their leadership to do it for them, right? And that's the opposite of what a leader should be doing. You should have the systems, the processes, policies, all this stuff in place and the training in place so you empower your staff to do these things on their own accord. So you can leave, go on a vacation without your company completely tanking when you're gone.
Exactly. And not just go on vacation, as I said, just like the quote unquote vacation and work during the vacation, but, answer that question. I mean, can you leave your company without your cell phone? Like, basically remove all the apps from the cell phone, don't answer, leave the cell phone behind you and the laptop and any connections. I mean, can you really do that? Can you go off the grid? That's a
Yep.
challenge, right? Now, there is also another challenge is no time to build the business, no time to work on the business. Because we all know that as business owners, we gotta have time allocated to build the systems. Even if you hire people, it's still your vision, it's still your strategy. So if you're the visionary of the business and you do not have the time to wear that hat and really define that vision and work on it and work on the business, not in the business, that's definitely a common challenge that I see.
Yeah, so a lot of leaders, they're trying to navigate their team, they're trying to pick the destination, chart the course, and drive the ship at the same time. So obviously as a visionary, it's important that I can navigate the course, chart the course and choose the destination, but then take your hands off the steering wheel, right? And that's why having systems and processes that are trainable, duplicatable, and we'll talk more about this stuff, but that's why it's absolutely essential for businesses that truly want to scale where you can keep some morsel of your sanity, right? Because it's like, although I love beautifying America one house at a time, I still want to work to live, ideally, in a perfect world. Like, I'm willing to work hard, but I still want to have a life. A prisoner in your own business, right? It's like how many owners watching this feel like you're a prisoner of your own business, right? But again, there's a better way to do it, right? And this is why I'm really excited about this topic, because if you partner up with the right company, again, like Business Success Consulting Group, and get all these systems and processes in place, it puts you in a position now, it empowers you as a leader where you can be that visionary that your team needs, because they need you to oversee, work on your business, not in your business, to navigate where you're going next and make sure that you have the time to invest in the tools and the training, and again, try to forecast what's ahead where we need to be proactive about, in terms of our preparedness. So
you're absolutely right. It's like we did a survey and we asked business owners, we asked them, what do you find the most desirable about being a business owner, about being an entrepreneur and owning your own business. And they said basically the number one answer was freedom, control of my own destiny, and be able to be creative, like creating my own system, creating what I want to do, right? So those were the three main answers. Then we asked them, what do you find most undesirable about being a business owner? And they said, the responsibility, now I'm responsible for all the families of the people that work under me and the people, managing people and all the paperwork and all the dealing with governments and dealing with legal issues and all that you find undesirable.
A lot of pressure.
So, yeah, a lot of pressure, right? So, but if you have systems, you can eliminate that pressure. But the thing is that it's really important to, like, as we go along in this webinar and explain the process of how we are going to document, how can you document, what can you do, is really go back to that point, like envision the point where you decided, when you make the decision to become a business owner, when you actually go, oh, wow, that will actually give me the freedom that I want. You maybe at that time, maybe you worked for a bigger company or another contractor, or maybe you took on the family business, or you just decided that, you are best working for yourself and you want that freedom. You had that sense of freedom at the time. You can regain it by actually systematizing, organizing the business. You do not need to be all overwhelmed and feeling like everything is just on you. And that is, I think, the bottom line of like the challenge to actually, like you asked me about common challenges, is how to regain that freedom that's why you went to business for. And regaining that thought and really looking at that vision of why did you open your business? What did you think it will be? Without thinking now, oh yeah, I thought what a fool I was to think that it will be like that, just like a fairy tale. No, it can happen. With the help of Dominic and his team, with help of other professionals that can help you, set up this, your sales system, set up your processes. It can happen. So don't think about solutions, but think really how it made you feel when you decided that you want to have your own business and be your own boss.
Yeah, so this is kind of a two-part question, so I apologize in advance, but it's obviously segueing more in-depth into the importance of process and why it's so important. But question one for me, this is something I'm just curious, what do you feel is the number one reason why people don't make the investment to get those processes in place, implemented, those procedures, those systems? What do you think is the biggest roadblock, whether it's mentally or time or just because they're so busy in their business they don't think to do it? So what's the biggest obstacle or block that prevents people from doing this? And of course, why do you feel having those effective processes and procedures are so crucial for the success of these companies?
Okay, good. So I'm going to answer the first one first.
Yep.
And I think the main roadblock, honestly, is because we get into production. We get into putting out fires. We get into like, okay, we're going to do this, this, and this, and this is what we're going to do. Production, the next sale, the next, I'm going to handle it somehow. I just can't stop. It becomes this rat race. It's like, it's like kind of like a squirrel wheel. It's kind of like a hamster wheel. You just go around and around and around and around, and you don't do that. I mean, it's probably the same answer of like when you ask people like, why won't we stop for a second, implement those sales systems so you can actually sell more? Why? Well, I can't take my salespeople off production and train them. Well, if you can't do that, you will never grow and scale. I mean, that's the simplicity of it. It's like
So I actually had a big company. I'm not going to name the company, but it was a $200 million company, right? Very successful, one of the largest in its category. And we were talking about doing a 2-day in-person sales training boot camp. Now they had over 110 salespeople. So for owners of a $200 million organization, for them to take their whole team off the road for 2 full days to do an in-person training, that's a hell of an investment in their mind. Like, what are we investing? $1 million in lost opportunities by doing this, right? It's not what they're paying me, it's the cost of taking their team off the road. And thankfully, they took a chance, right? Because we really gave them that peace of mind that the return on investment will be realized. And I gave them some case studies. I gave them enough information where they could give me their informed consent, so to speak. We did the 2-day boot camp. Obviously, they loved it. It was amazing. But the thing I loved about it the most about this story is that week that their salespeople were off the road was actually the biggest week they had that entire month, and it was the last week of the month. It was actually the biggest selling week because the sales reps came out of there obviously fired with enthusiasm, ready to kick butt and take names, and they ended up absolutely blowing it out of the water the next few days coming out of the training. So long story short, they never skipped a beat. It was like they never took that time off the road, and all they did was they just shifted some of those leads forward a few days. So then, of course, when the sales reps got out of training, they had a nice full schedule, 2 or 3 leads a day versus the 1 to 2 that they're accustomed to. But that's just an example how they were very hesitant, but then they took the leap of faith, and obviously it paid off in dividends ever since. So
absolutely, and that's a great story and a great
Yeah.
example. And I have stories about it as well, like in terms of, the way that we build our program is to accommodate fast-growing companies that don't have time, right? So we don't even ask our clients anymore to, okay, get us there for 2 days and close the company. No, we are doing it through production, by basically meeting them weekly on a certain cadence with certain, like alternating people because we want them to continue to produce. But from my experience, and I can give you story after story, is like when you start putting organization and ordering, like for instance, as an example, we were working with an HVAC company. We were documenting their accounts receivable. They showed it to us. They shouldn't have any accounts receivable because, the homeowner should pay the balance at the end, like after the installation. But there was something wrong with their process where it wasn't followed all the way through. So we actually worked it out, and they started implementing it the next day, and boom, they just first of all, they collected about like $100,000, and that's not what I was charging them. So they definitely made much more money because they wouldn't have collected it otherwise. And then their gross income, the money that they were actually invoicing was going up and up and up, or receiving, because they didn't have the problem with accounts receivable that they were overlooking, and they didn't even know that somebody basically started implementing something else.
Yep.
So it is really, you are investing. I look at it as an investment. It is a time investment. It's a mental investment. Of course, it's a money investment. But what do you gain? So I think now I'm going to answer question number 2, which is why documentation is important.
Yeah, and I just wanted to ask you this because this popped in my head because, again, similar to you, we see patterns on when contractors decide to call us for help, right? There's certain patterns and consistencies at like what stage of growth and development, whether it be the size of their organization or the amount of people on their team. And for us, it seems like that $5 to $10 million phase of growth and development with companies is when they finally get to the breaking point where they're like, I need some help here because I can already see that things are starting to fall apart. I'm losing control and I don't have any systems in place. I'm just curious what your experience has been like for home improvement contractors. Like at what stage do you start to see in their growth and success where they're like, things are ramping up and I'm afraid I'm going to lose control? Are you seeing a lot of that $5 to $10 million range where people really?
We see 5 to 10, and then we see the bigger ones too. I mean, it's a little bit.
Yep.
When it's bigger, like in the 20, 30. I even, we work with companies between, like as a we can work with a little bit smaller, a little bit bigger, but home improvement between 5 million and 100 million. And usually it's in the 20, 30, 40. That's when they also, because you see, they don't want to lose momentum, right? They want to have better sales. So then they get into the sales, but then they get more leads because let's say, okay, so they come to you, you help them, boom, they close more, they sell more, then they have to make a transition into a better operations and better organization in order to actually service all the marketing and all the sales. So we definitely work with, I see all of them, and I see in different stages. So it's really depend on what stage they come to us. They can be a $5 million company, and they somehow got by, but then they grew and grew, and now they are 20, 30, and they see that in order for them to scale farther, they need processes. So I don't, it's a variety of sizes, absolutely.
Yeah, and I've experienced the same thing. I've had companies that come to us and they already have 50 reps, and now they're just starting to build a sales process because they've just kind of let things, because they've had reasonable success for a while, reasonable enough, I guess, for them to justify it. But then all of a sudden they're like, wow, this is like herding cats. I don't even know where to begin. I need to get my sales foundation and all this policies and procedures and processes in place because I'm losing control. They can kind of feel it slipping through their fingers.
Absolutely. And Dominic, on that one, I also have seen companies that, they have solid, or what they think is a solid sales process, right? Because they had salespeople that worked with them for a long time, but then they realize, okay, now we're expanding. The capacity is not there. We need to hire new salespeople. Well, we really don't have a process. How are we going to train? Really look at what is our training, and do we really want to just duplicate and replicate what the existing sales team is doing? No, we should really invest in putting the infrastructure there, and then they need to invest in a new sales process.
Well, and as you mentioned earlier, is that knowledge trapped up in their brains, or is it something that's clearly documented and trainable to others, right? So that's very common in sales, where a company has like a $3-4 million producer. They have this career veterans that have found an authentic way of selling that works for them, but it's not trainable, right? It's just like the analogy I like to use, if anybody watches the NBA. Now, I'm not a basketball fanatic by any means, but I was happy when the Milwaukee Bucks won the NBA championship, and you have Giannis, the Greek freak, one of the most dominant athletes in the history of the game. What if Giannis tried to train every player on their team to play exactly the way he does? He's an all-star, MVP of the league, one of the most dominant players of all time. What would happen, though, if that top performer is trying to train everybody to play just simply exactly the way he does? That would never work. You would have the worst team of all time, right? So the reason why that NBA team is successful is because you have all these different athletes of different strengths and weaknesses and different athletic capabilities that the coach and the processes and the systems he has in place, the drills, he can basically take all their talents and train them to execute as a unit to achieve a common goal, right? Collectively. So that's why the processes, the playbooks are absolutely essential, and having a good coach to navigate them.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So now I'm going to answer why documentation is important, and this is also came from people like you, the ones that are watching us right now, because this is by survey. So if you have processes and procedures, it's not owner dependent, and it's also not dependent on one person. You achieve consistency. Consistency is a word that I hear a lot.
Yeah.
It's risk mitigation.
Yep.
It's risk mitigation, again, because not only the knowledge resides in a person's head, but not only that, it's risk mitigation because your customers, your clients are getting the same service from everybody that goes there. Let's say you have a process of how to do the design consultation. Good, everyone gets the same service. Nobody's being promised something that they're not supposed to promise. Of course,
Right.
you have to then apply the processes, but it's in writing, right? You are basically protecting yourself. So there is a lot of that. Onboarding new employees, they get a great experience. You know how to onboard. You then are not being held hostage by your employees that you want to let go, because how many of you honestly did not let go of an employee that you knew that you had to let go, but the thought in your head was, well, how am I going to fill out their position, and how am I going to train somebody new, and I better just leave them because ... Yeah. So onboarding, training, right? I mean, training new employees, training existing employees, creating again that consistency. That leads to a great culture. I know there's a lot of talking out there about culture, etc., but what is a great culture? For me, a great culture is a culture that empowers people and empowers them to really own their position and be accountable, take responsibility, and really be proud of what they do, have a pride in their work. And how do you accomplish that? They have to know what they're doing. And not only they have to know what they're doing, they have to know what is expected of them, because they might come from another company and they think that they know what they're doing, right? But this is not your processes. this is not your process, this is not your procedures. So they need to know what is expected for them and then follow it. So that will create also that great culture, and people will also feel stability. You know, Dominic, it's a great question. It's a great example. I always will remember that, is that we created the processes and procedures for a real estate company. And we presented it to the we came and presented to the staff, to the employees. And after that, one employee came to us, and he was brand new. He was like about 2 months in the company. And he goes, wow, I feel that I made the right decision to join the right company because they care enough about us to invest. And they actually explain very clearly what is needed for me to actually have a road to success. And that was amazing, you know, and I never thought about it before, but the stability that it gives you to actually have all of it documented, his words definitely express that.
Yeah, no, I agree wholeheartedly, and I can relate to that. I was actually just talking, because I do a lot of sales leadership coaching. I was just talking to a sales leader about conducting interviews with new salespeople. And this is applicable to any department, any organization. But when I would interview a high caliber individual that I knew was professional, of course, first impressions matter. You know, make sure when they came into my office, it was dress right dress, it was nice, clean, and organized. I was dressed professional, because perception's reality, right? What is their perception of the professionalism of this job that they're applying for? Because again, we're both interviewing one another, and I want to make sure that whatever culture or professional team that I envision for myself I'm going to build, that is what they see the second they walk in. And I had our training book right on the table, our policy and procedures right on the table, and I explained this. I had our online university behind me to show them that we have everything documented, we have everything clearly outlined and organized, we have all the tools and support you would need to thrive in your respective position. And this goes back to, I'm a big fan of Brian Tracy, and he talks about his favorite word in leadership, and I tend to agree, is clarity. Clarity. Be crystal clear on exactly what's expected of your employee, roles and responsibilities. Of course, for salespeople, I talk a lot about communication requirements, lead handling etiquette, dress attire, the actual system they're following, all the different elements of their position to be successful. Get it documented, get it in writing, make sure they're crystal clear on what that is. And in terms of policy and procedure and all this stuff, I would spend 3 or 4 hours the first day of training just hammering that stuff, policy and procedure, so they have crystal clear and realistic expectations on what this job is. So the more gray I am on like the reality of the job, the more like they get hit in between the eyes with reality afterwards, and that's not fair to them. And then it causes turnover and instability in your culture, right?
Right, absolutely, absolutely. And I know that's what you help companies with, and you know, in terms of the sales, and it's you know, and the other why the communication is so important, and I think we touched that. It's just the, you know, it's the knowledge transfer to make sure that you protect yourself, part of the risk mitigation. Scaling. I mean, when I ask people, like when they start working with us, I always want to know their why, right? Because I want to know what motivates them. For me, just telling me that they read it in a book and they know they need processes and procedures, it's not enough. Like, what is your personal why? Why do you want to do that? And a lot of the main thing that comes up is because this is what's going to help us scale. Now, what does it mean to scale? It means that you are growing, you are implementing systems so you can grow with still have and be more profitable, not just grow for the sake of growth, just adding more people, but you are scaling your operation. You're more efficient, you're more consistent, so you can actually be more profitable, but still grow. So it's maybe expand to another area, maybe increase the amount of jobs that you can do in a most efficient way, not just hire another 10 people so you can multiply the amount of jobs that you do, but let's see if you can actually multiply the number of jobs that you do, increase it by, I don't know, but by whatever factor, but with the people that you have, and maintain profitability. So to scale is very important. And so you can exit, you know, this is why it's very important. And I can give you many examples. I'll give you an example of one of my clients, a contractor, that we documented all of his processes and procedures, and he was able to sell his company by twice. He received twice the price. He told me that he would have received if there weren't any processes documented.
Amazing.
And I can tell you that, you know, another example is somebody that contacted us, I mean, one of our clients contacted us after they bought a business. And he realized after he bought the business that nothing is documented, and he's relying on a few key employees to know how the business operates.
Bought a fixer-upper. They call that a fixer-upper.
That's a fixer-upper, exactly. So he invited us there to renovate. He basically engaged with us to extract all the information and put everything in place so he can retain his investment. But can you imagine if you had it? And this is a great story. I have one of our clients is a painting contractor, and he moved to another state, and he wanted to sell his business in the state he was living in. And I was there with him when we sat at the negotiation table with the business broker, introduced him to a great business broker, and we were sitting there in front of a potential buyer. And he brought me there because he wanted me to show the potential buyer all the documentations that we have and what we created and answer any questions. And, we created videos and screenshots, and all the way from like how, when you arrive at the job site, how do you set it up? Where do you set the equipment, etc. And his eyes, you should see the eyes of the buyer, was like so big. It was like, he couldn't believe it, because that's what you are buying, right? I mean, what are you buying? You're buying obviously the reputation, you are buying, the names, you're buying the clients, you are buying the customers, but you are buying maybe the employees, but who knows if they're going to stay, but you are buying the systems. You are buying something. That's a solid thing that you are buying, is the systems, because you know that if you are going to get a franchise, you get it with systems. There is a system. So even if whatever happens to the previous owner, if you buy a franchise from another owner, or if you buy it from new, there is a very specific methodical way of how you do things. Yep. Well, that's what you are buying, basically. It's a specific methodical way. And that's why it's important you have everything documented. So when you exit, you definitely get a better value for your business.
I had a question that popped in my head, because we're talking about all this documentation and obviously how valuable that is for businesses to have everything clearly documented and in writing. What are some of the ways you see companies protecting that information, right? Because you always have that fear. What if one of my employees decides they want to take all my intellectual property, all my documentation, they go to one of my competitors and it's like, here you go, here's how they did everything, here's the keys of the kingdom, so to speak. Because I've had, honestly, full transparency, I've had that happen numerous times where my training book got taken from somebody, and there's hundreds of companies that are using my sales training book, for example, that I never even talked to. So, which I'm fine with, because for me it's all about how you trained it and utilize it that matters the most.
So that's what I said. Look, if somebody's not gonna do it because of that fear, I said, then you're in the wrong business. Then you don't really. It happens all the time. I mean, how many times you see a big company comes up with one thing, like an innovative thing, the next morning their competitors come up with the same thing. I mean, it happens, right? But it is like, what is your unique proposition? Okay, so maybe, and especially if somebody is actually stealing, they're criminals. So how are they going to treat their customers? It's not just the processes, it's the process and people, and how you actually bring it to life and how to implement it. So you can have a process on how to answer the call in your call center, but then you're going to train your employees, and they're going to basically have your core values, and they're going to present it in such a way that the person on the other line feels that you're friendly and welcome, etc. But if somebody is criminal enough to actually take somebody else's intellectual property, how do you think they're going to treat their customers? You know what I mean? So I go, let them have
I think
it,
of
whatever.
This stuff, here's how I justify it in my mind. Like, let's just take our sales training processes and all that as an example. So I like to think of that as a tool, right? So our sales training system is a tool, and just like any tool, it's only as good as how you use it and implement it. And you could, for example, have the best garage and the best tools to take an engine apart and put it back together, but just because the tools are there, it doesn't mean I have the proficiency to actually dive in and start doing the work and do it effectively at a high level. So it's how you utilize those tools to the fullest extent. And this is obviously what we're going to talk about here in our following segment here, which I'm really excited. And by the way, make sure, because we're going to have live Q&A after this recording, And Adi is absolute wealth of knowledge. Make sure you are writing down questions, asking questions that she can answer. And as you can see, she's very precise and very organized in how she answers the questions, which is just a testament to what she can bring to the table for your business. And before we dive into the 4-step process, anything else you wanted to finish on the previous topic?
Yeah, I'm just going to give you some numbers in terms of like we did a poll. What are the top aspects of why process documentation is important?
Yep.
And increased efficiency was 42%, consistency is 30%, training 21%, and having transparency was 7%. So that's basically what we were looking at, like in terms of like breaking it down. That's people like our audience right now, basically that's what they said in terms of percentages. So I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, so getting really nitty gritty, we're gonna roll up our sleeves, so definitely get your notepads out, get your popcorn ready here. We're gonna be diving into Business Success Consulting Group's 4-step process. And this is absolutely, it makes all the sense in the world to me how this is set up. Every step just as important as the next. It's like a chain, it's only as good as its weakest link. But I wanna kind of delve into step 1 here that we talk about here, Adi, which is design. So in terms of your company, Business Success Consulting Group, how do you go about mapping out a company's process in detail to begin that design process?
Yeah. So the first thing that we do in terms of the design, and that is very important, and it's very much like an analogy to a blueprint that contractor will have. I mean, you can't start on a remodeling project without actually knowing what you're doing. You got to have the design. And maybe the design will take, 10%, I mean, 20% of the entire time of the project, 5% maybe, but it really controls the majority of the project. It really does.
It's kind of like building a house, right?
Yeah, exactly. Because otherwise it's all over the place and we don't know where we are going. So we are very, very specific about that. We want to have like a specific roadmap of what we're going to do. So what we do is first of all, we set up the documentation system. Even before that, I'm going to start, we use a documentation system. We like to use some kind of a cloud-based system where we actually document the processes and procedures. Reason why is because we want to have them all in a place where it's easy to access, that you can access it from whatever device, from an iPad, from a cell phone, from a computer, and it's very accessible.
Yeah, so this discovery stuff, when you're obviously carving out the design, is there ever any need for you to physically be at their place of business, or is most of this done remotely?
It's mostly done remotely. I mean, because we are recording everything and then using it. So yeah, remotely is fine. We have clients all over the US, actually all over the world. We have clients in the UK, in Australia. It's totally fine, not a problem. So the first thing we decide on a process documentation system. And we have we have a few vendors that we work with, and we basically will show you which one to use, and we'll ask you questions so we can actually recommend which one will be best. The next step is to map the processes. Now, we can have, remember, I'm an industrial engineer, we can go into all kind of technology, terms that I don't need to go. We just like very simple.
It'd be over my head anyway. So
yeah, we take a whiteboard. Everybody knows what a whiteboard is. We take an electronic whiteboard. We take sticky notes, electronic sticky notes. We basically go, okay, so we do it with you. Dominic, what are the main areas of your company? Okay, I have this, I have that, I have that. I have a call center, I have sales, I have installation, I have marketing and business development, I have accounting, I have HR. Great, good. Sticky notes at the top. Tell me about what each one of them consists of. And this is an exercise that right now whomever is watching this webinar can do. This is our process. We do it for you, but I'm also giving you now, because this is basically like the knowledge of how to do it. So you are watching this, how to do it, do that. Whiteboard, sticky notes, you map the process. Then you look at the board and you ask yourself, what area, if I had well-documented processes and procedures, will get me the biggest return on investment? Okay? And what is a return on investment? Remember like why we talked about the challenges and the importance of processes and procedures? Well, what is it? What is that return on investment for you? You want more time with your family. Good. What do I need to document so I can actually take that hat off and give it to somebody else? That's your return on investment. You are about to hire a new install manager. Good, the install processes should be documented. Your office manager is about to go on maternity leave. Nobody knows what she does. Good, let's document her processes. It's whatever it is, it has to be real, right?
Yeah.
So we decide, okay, this is where we're going to start. If you don't mind, if you don't, it depends on the stage of your business and where you're at. Some businesses want to start from beginning to end, which is fine. It's totally fine. And I love doing those because it goes in sequence.
Yep.
So then you decide, okay, let's decide we're going to do our install processes. Good. Who do you want to clone in that department? Because remember, it's not you that have to write it. It's not you that have to participate in every meeting. You meaning the owner. But it's important that you're involved, but we have to figure out who are we going to extract the information from? Because that's what we do. We extract the information from that person so we can actually write. Then what we do is we create due dates for accountability, and we schedule the meetings so we can start with the process documentation.
So do you have challenges there when you give people deadlines, them meeting those deadlines? Is that a constant struggle, like for them to actually take action and execute?
Yes and no. I'll tell you why, because we are experts on getting it done. If they try to do it on themselves, yes.
Yeah,
and if people are
I
not
can definitely see that.
And if people are not committed, it's a problem. So that is one of the things that we do actually, maybe even before the design.
Yeah.
And that is, you will see on the screen, it's the initial evaluation. We vet our clients. We want clients that are actually going to be a success, because if somebody does not have time to invest, they cannot be our clients because they're not going to do anything. And it will be a loss for both of us. And I want raving fans. One of the things that we proud ourselves is that we always finish projects. I don't want project left in the middle without it being completed. And that will only happen to us. And it doesn't happen it almost never happens. But when a client decided, okay, they just decided don't have time, well, they're not ready to begin with, and we shouldn't have taken them as clients.
Yeah, so if you see me smiling, it's because, again, I think a lot of men can relate to this. I'm really good at starting projects, right? I can start projects with the best of them, but finishing the project is a whole different animal, right? I'm just talking like around the household, like for example, I actually personally demoed and gutted our whole bathroom before we had any plan on what we were going to do to put it back together. And long story short, that project took over an hour, a lot of punishment. My wife was not too impressed with that.
Dominic, you're still married, which is great. So
yes,
good
exactly.
job. You got through it.
Yeah,
but anyway, the point being, yeah, exactly. So that's what we are there to coach you, and we do it, like we take the burden. So what we do before even the design, to answer that, to overcome that, is that we conduct a lot of surveys. We actually want to have the buy-in. So we figure out like the why. I talked a lot about the why, like why is it important for you? But not just for you, also for your staff. Yeah. What is it going to do for your company if you had well-documented processes and procedures? And that is very important. So once we have that buy-in, then people are coming to that meeting prepared with knowing what will happen. And we are not also threatening, because another thing that can happen, like we're not a threat, basically, because people can feel that, oh, now they're going to know what I do. So maybe I'm not as, maybe I'm replaceable. But the thing again, it's your culture. Hopefully you have people that know that if they are producing for you and doing what they're supposed to be doing, they're going to stay with you. And you're going to appreciate it. And there's going to be a lot of appreciation. So
yeah, for a business owner to go through this process, they have to be willing to get vulnerable, right? Because they have to be willing to disclose personal information if you're going to be able to make that lasting change. And I was just curious, that whole design phase, and of course, it depends on every company size, different, but between like a $5 million and a $30 million company, how long do you see that process typically taking to get that initial design? I think you said it was like 5 to 10% of the whole process on average.
It's about a couple. That can be probably a couple of meetings, like an hour and a half, a couple of hour and a half meetings. Sometimes a little bit longer, but that's usually like.
And of course, you've learned, what questions you need to be asking to get at the root of the information you need. And then, of course, behind the scenes, you and your team are doing a lot of the heavy lifting for them.
Be like the face-to-face, that's the time, but then we do behind the scenes and ask the questions and prepare the surveys and analyze the surveys and all of that. But the time that is required from our clients, I would say maybe the first 3 weeks, that's what we are going to do, right?
Yeah.
But then we go into the documentation phase, which is, that's what we do it for you. And that's the fun part. That's creating it. That's building the house. So the way that what it looks like is, and that's again, I'm giving you, like, we're giving our audience the basically how to do it. You can take it. This is our process. You can go and do it.
It's the keys to the kingdom, my roadmap, and this is why, I can't thank you enough, because you're being more than generous here, because this is stuff, again, throughout many, many years of working and experience and your knowledge, expertise. You figured out a process, and you're basically sharing that. And again, there's no obligation for anyone to do anything. But at the same time, I think you'll find, just by listening to Adi and just how dialed in and professional she is, why it's going to behoove you to reach out and get some help with some of this stuff. But truly, she's giving you the roadmap. If you're looking to make some of these changes on your own accord, you have the step-by-step process on how to do it. So I think that's wonderful.
The same thing as like watching you can watch a YouTube. A lot of contractors have that as their marketing strategy. If you go on YouTube, you can see contractors that basically explain how to do it. How to do things. That you can explain how to remodel a bathroom. You can explain how to install something or how to repair something. There will be probably, it's kind of like a curve, right? You will have the 5% of people that will do it themselves and they will not call you anyway, but let them have the information and use it. Absolutely. I want every business to be successful. There will be those at the end that never will do anything, not hire anybody and don't do it themselves. And then there is the middle part, which I am very much part of that as well, because I hire professionals to help me. It's kind of like, I see that there is expertise. I see that the process is very important to me. I need to understand that the person can really see things and how they operate. Then I'll hire them, right? So it's wherever you fall in the curve is fine. But here we go. So documentation. So here are some advice that I will give the audience in terms of how to document. You have to carve the time for it. There's never going to be time. And what I say to people is, I have no time. Well, you have time probably to watch football if that's important to you, right? And I'm not saying do process documentation instead of watching football, but you have time to do this, and that. What you don't have time is something that is not important enough. So it's prioritizing the time.
Yeah, I like to reverse that, right? It's where the objection becomes the reason why you should do it, because if you don't have the time, you definitely need to do this. Like, this is why this exercise is vital, right? It's like, if you can't afford it, then you definitely need it. It's like
exactly right. It's kind of like one of my clients, before he became a client, one of the objections was, well, he had an older employee that they needed to do a knowledge transfer. And I was like, he goes, well, but she's sick all the time, so she's not there, so I have to wait. I go like, well, I think that is the reason why you shouldn't wait, because there might be no wait after that. So that's a very good point. So yeah, so we can handle the objections, but carve a time every single week. Like with us, when we engage with a client, we have specific time that we obviously work with the team, decide who is going to be on that call and when is a good time for them. But we specifically set up those times. So we absolutely need to make sure that happens. We then have a documentation session. What we do is first of all, we take all the existing documentation. So if you already have something that exists, we're not into reinventing the wheel or doing things over and over. So we are definitely going to take inventory of everything that you have. We're going to take the process map that we created, and we're going to go step by step and basically have the subject matter experts explain us how things are being done. So basically, they're training us. So if, let's say, you are doing it yourself, you will have to think like that person that is writing it from the viewpoint that if somebody never saw their process before and walked into the business, they will be able to execute it. They will be able to sit down and they will be able to do it.
Yep.
Now, a question that I'm being asked a lot in this one is, how much is enough? Like, how do I know? Now, of course, we have the knowledge to know how much is enough. Sometimes people go overboard. People can go, the pendulum swings both ways. They write like 200-page process that nobody reads, or they don't write enough and nobody understands and they can see just the overall, right? So you have to make sure, again, it's the end result that matters. So I always ask, who is going to read this procedure? Why are you writing it? How do you want to use it? How are you going to use it in order to manage your business? How are you going to find solutions to any problems and what the problems are? And what people are going to gain from it. So those are some of the questions that we always ask, and that will direct us into how much is enough and what do we write.
Yeah, and how can we simplify this and streamline it in a way, and this is obviously what we'll talk about next, is so that it is trainable and digestible. And because again, let's just take sales training for example, because again, that's my life. I've honestly gone through sales trainings that are ultra complicated and really difficult to understand and damn near impossible to implement. So my biggest thing is I want to make sure that I'm breaking these things down in a way, and again, I'm not taking offense to anybody, but I want to train my process, my system in a way where a 6-year-old can understand what I'm saying and they can begin implementation right away without, pulling their hair out, investing all this time. Having to go through it 30 different times in order for it to sink in. So, and I'm assuming it's the same way when you're documenting these things, making sure that it's obviously clear, it's detailed, but it's written in a way where a normal person can read it and they can understand it and implement it.
Absolutely. And another rule is like, it depends, again, that's why you ask those questions, because let's say I'm documenting accounting procedures. Now, you know that you're always going to hire a bookkeeper that already has QuickBooks experience. You're not there to teach somebody QuickBooks. Yeah. Good. So when you document, we don't have to document how to use QuickBooks. Right. We have to document how do you use what are the processes and procedures that you use in the business using QuickBooks. And it's written to somebody that already had basic QuickBooks training. Yeah. So that is where you differentiate. But again, it has to be clear. It has to be digestible. It has to be broken down into steps that people can assimilate very easily. You have to use all types of training because some people don't like to read. So we also use videos, audio, screenshots. We bring links to spreadsheets, like that's, I call it more the kinesthetic, the tactile, like people can see how they can click on the link and go into the spreadsheet and see how it works. So we utilize all methods of learning. And what we do when we work with our clients is we record everything, and then we have technical writers that basically write the procedures for you. So that is done it for you. If you're doing it yourself, definitely record. That's my suggestion, is record what you do. And then, you will have to start writing it. But it's doable. There are people that know how to do it. But that's the thing. That's basically the process of how we do that.
So when you're creating videos on this documentation, all this stuff, is that like you're screen capturing, going through that stuff, or is it how is that video captured?
Yeah, we just we record a video as we are, like say right now we are recording this interview the same way, and then we capture it. We basically capture the parts from the video, and we know what to capture, and we edit it so it's very concise, because nobody wants to watch a 4-minute video on how to schedule a lead on your lead scheduling software. It has to be basically very fast. Now, what we capture is like, because some of the audience can say, well, I can find a training tutorial online. Yes, you can, and we're not going to duplicate it. And we encourage you to do that. And if you don't know where to find it, we'll help you find it, because that has to be included. Like, for instance, if we are using a system of booking a lead, there must be, if it's a reputable system, there should be a video somewhere of how to actually record a lead. And the person that we're training should, first of all, watch the official video. What we are interested in is the nuances, is your processes, is how you do it. We are going to adjust it specifically to you, because maybe you found that asking the person for the time comes before we actually ask for their name and address and everything else, right? Because then they're close. You go, okay, well, I actually have availability on Tuesday at 12, or Tuesday at 12 or 2, which one works better? Immediately go, oh, 2, good, okay, boom, locked. Now you decided that you are going to ask for all of their details, as opposed to asking for all the details, and at the end, they don't want to book and you wasted time. I'm just giving I made up that example right now. So I go like, okay, well, if you do that, then you want to record that, so that becomes your process, right?
That's just great, though. Obviously, companies have their process, but just it's evident talking to you that you also have a lot of wisdom and advice. Like if someone says, "I'm not sure how to structure this," like there's a lot of information you can share with them on best practices and what highly successful organizations are doing that you can bring to the table, and that's the beauty of it, right?
Absolutely. We have a lot of experience, and we are there, as I tell people, we're not transcribers. I mean, you can record videos and have somebody online transcribe it. That's not what we do. If you want that we are not the right company for you. We are there to actually design your processes. We are there to extract the relevant information, or all the information, because then you don't have to think. I tell my clients, don't stress about it. You don't have to prepare, show up to talk. And the majority of people like to talk, right? I mean, have you met a contract doesn't like to talk about what they do?
Right.
Right? So just talk, just explain to me. That's why it takes us hours after that to process it and really extract what matters out of it, right? And then we create the videos that matter, and we basically simmer down the information and make it into doable processes and procedures that work. But it's also our questions that we ask. We ask, why are you doing it that way? What problem are you trying to solve? Some examples, right? Where are we going with this? Like, people ask me, is this important? As I said, I ask those questions. Is it? I don't, when are you going to use it? Oh, this happens once a year. Forget it. We're not going to touch it right now. We're going to go into what is important. So that's where I see that, it's like, that's part of the documentation. And if we come up with new processes, then we test them. I go, okay, well, this week, here's the process. And this week, try it out. Let's talk about it next week and see what the results were and what we need to optimize.
Yeah. So that's a perfect segue, right? So, and again, that's a buzzword that a lot of people are using all over the world right now, especially with the rise of technology and automation and AI. Everything's all about optimization, efficiency, things like that, right? And that's what I love about your process. And again, you've been doing this for a long time. But after you design everything, after everything's clearly documented, now it's all about optimization. So how does Business Success Consulting Group go about refining and streamlining operations for maximum efficiency?
Sure. So first of all, I just want to add a little bit, because the segue between them, like when we document, right? So as I said, we start department by department. So when we're done with a certain department, or even in the process of doing it, so let's say we meet weekly. Let's say we document your sales department, or your install department, okay? Let's say you are a contractor. So then we meet with your staff, and every week we meet, we then record, we document, we send you what we call a documentation tracker, where you have the list of everything that we did, with questions, with remarks, with additional information. So then you and your team can review it between meetings and give us feedback. We'll incorporate it before our next meeting, and then we have our meeting, and then we continue with the documentation. So there is always this feedback. There is always, what we're doing, and you always get, you review it between, so we can move faster. So that's one of the things that we do with the documentation. Once we're done with the department and we have everything, I mean, it's not even once, we don't wait. I mean, once we're done with the process, so let's say we have the measuring process, okay, before we go into the installation. Okay, good. So what we ask questions. I mean, we really keep it simple. I know it's a buzzword and everything, but the simplicity of it, is it working for you or is it not working for you? Okay.
So I'm just curious, Adi, just popped in my head. What's the most common department companies call you for first? Is it more marketing, front end, sales, back end, production, operations, installation? I guess, are you seeing where it seems like this department is the most prevalent that needs a lot of help, or is it equal across the board?
I think it's equal across the board. It really depends on what's happening. Are you losing your install manager has been with you for 30 years? Are you wanting to hire another salesperson? Is your HR person leaving, or do you don't have any HR and now you got to it really depends of the situation.
That's what I like about it, though, is company can take it as little or as big as they want to go, right? Depending on currently what exactly is it that you need specifically. Of course, as you said, it's nice to do the full refresh from every department. Let's get everything optimized and documented. But again, if you can think to yourself, those of you watching, there's a specific challenge I have in this department where there's a lot of turnover, or it doesn't seem to be a lot of clarity as to exactly what these people should be doing. Start there, get that cleaned up, and then over time you can work on the rest of your business. So
absolutely, absolutely. So like the optimization, let's keep it simple. My philosophy really is that if it's working, then don't fix it. Some people are obsessed with change. I mean, some like client yesterday told me, I just like to change everything. Well, if you have a going, like if you're doing well, the business is working, then be careful, because you don't know where your success is coming from. You have to analyze it, right? You have to really be careful and not just change for the sake of change, because a lot of people don't like change and you're just rattling them when you're doing that.
I've actually had that experience, trying to fix something, I made it worse.
The thing is, I'm not saying don't change and don't try to fix, but here's the thing. You have to document first, because this is another objection that I hear a lot. It's like, why am I going to document my processes if they need to be changed? Well, if you don't have them documented, it will be very hard to change them, because you don't know what's working and what's not. And that's like the example you gave, Dominic. It's like very dangerous, because you will never be able to go back to what was working, and now you are in a mess. So my recommendation is, first of all, we document. It's not a waste of time. It's there. It's like the x-ray that you go to a doctor. I mean, they're going to start operating on different parts of your body to see where the problem is, or maybe they will do an MRI or an x-ray to actually pinpoint, and maybe we're then going to handle the problem, right?
Yeah, exactly.
But it's the same. It's like if people are trying to change, I mean, think about this analogy. Oh, you have a pain here. You don't know exactly where it is. Well, let me operate here and here and here and here and see if it... No, we don't do that, right? So we document. Then we really look at, and we do the optimization as we document. It's parallel, right? So basically we ask questions like, what are your biggest pain points? Like, what is working, what is not working? Let's look at your scorecard. Let's look at really, like, are there any problems somewhere? What are you running into? And we make a list of everything that people are running into. And then we pick the top 3 that needs to be changed. And then we look at the process and we see where are the bottlenecks in the process. What needs to be optimized or changed, or maybe tweaked a little bit. We identify those points. And then what we do, we document that. Like, we actually have a document. We go, okay, so it seems like, the problem we are running into is that our appointments, like maybe our appointments are being made, they are confirmed, but the appointments kept to schedule are not where they should be. Okay? Or maybe right now appointments kept to schedule are at 65%. All right. Well, I'm not promising you 95% right away, but what can we do in order to get the appointments up to 70 or 75? There'll be improvement, right? Good. Right. Maybe we need an additional confirmation. Good. Let's add it. Let's see what happens, and then measure it. Okay. Maybe the way that the script is worded is not good enough. Maybe we're not putting enough of a control there, right? I mean, I was just talking to a client yesterday, and I made a suggestion based on just knowledge and working with other contractors and knowing. They go, oh, wow, that's wonderful. We can do that. And that can probably tweak the confirmation, as an example. Yep. And then we test, measure that effectiveness, and make sure that it's optimized. But I think this is a good segue also to our last one, which is implementation. And the reason why I also want to talk about that is because I think it's all combined. If you don't actually implement the processes, because when you optimize something, you also have to make sure it's implemented and being used, right? Because that is really the test, is that it's being used.
Yeah, and that's the key with anything. I mean, like for us personally at GRA University, how do you get a team of veterans or people that have been doing it a certain way for a long time to now change what they're doing and implement something new, something foreign to them, something that is not necessarily what they've developed a habit of doing, right? So I think implementation, I mean, this whole thing's for naught unless they can have a successful implementation. So this is, in my opinion, one of the, obviously they're all equally as important, but yeah, if it's not implemented successfully.
That's a key.
Yeah.
And I tell my clients, or before I interview my clients, like prospects, when we talk, I basically said, there is no point in documenting if it's not going to get implemented.
Correct.
There is no point. There is no point in you investing money in this. There's no point in investing time in basically telling your staff to do it if it's not going to get implemented.
Yep.
And that is the number one problem that people come to me, like they even have great processes and procedures. They say, why are you coming to me? What's happening? Like, you have it, I see it, because I'm very good at that too. If I see good processes and procedures, we're not here to do double work and just to say, no, it's kind of like you have it, I can see it.
Well, that's just because you're a person of integrity, because it'd be easy for you to be like, yeah, it all sucks, let's rebuild it all for you, but you're going to be honest and upfront, like, yeah, this is actually really good, this is really dialed in. It's not the process or the documentation, let's just work on the implementation side of things, and I think you'll start seeing better results.
That's exactly right. And ask, why you're coming to me, what help do you need? Well, it's not being implemented, it's not being used. And again, going back to the consistency word, they want consistency, it's just not being used.
Yeah.
So there is I developed actually an 8-step process on how to implement, how to make sure the processes are being followed by everyone. And I know you and I are going to do more webinars in the future, and that is a top one of how to actually get accountability and get it followed by all. And I will share my process with you and with our audience. I have no problem doing that, because as I said before, it's either you can do it yourself, go ahead and do it. And that's what we do with our clients too. Like when we are done with the documentation and optimization, we teach them the 8-step process. Yeah. Sometimes they go, okay, we'll do it ourselves. And sometimes they want us to do it. And that's where you will see in our proven process diagram, we come in and we make sure that it's being utilized. There is periodic review, revisions are being made. But I can tell you that the step number one, and that's the only one I'm going to talk about today in terms of implementation, yes, because there are different steps in terms of how to roll it out to the team, how to get feedback, how to make sure they're using it, how to make sure they understand it, how to utilize in day-to-day management, how to make sure the procedures are being current and are being used. There's a whole process about it. Not complicated, but it has to be followed. Yep. But the number one is the mindset, and it's the mindset of the owner. Because the number one thing that is going to kill this project is that after everything is documented, you're going to come and people are going to ask you questions and you go, well, I'm just going to answer just that one because it takes me 2 minutes to answer as opposed to sending them to do the processes. Or somebody saying, well, I am not the process type of person. I'm a visionary. So processes, you handle processes, I don't care. Or processes, you just like dismiss the project somehow, in some ways in our language that we use and whatnot. The most successful companies that are actually transformed because of processes and procedures are the ones where the leaders, you talked about clarity, openness, it's where the leaders lead. And Dominic, you and I recorded a podcast where I interviewed you and you gave me so many examples. And that's why you are who you are and the success that you are, because there is nothing in your organization and what you teach your the clients and you did not do yourself, and you cannot perform yourself. And that is true leadership. So that's why rolling it out, it starts from the top. Yeah, I agree 100%. And we get that at GRA University a lot, where these owners or sales leaders, whoever's overseeing their sales division, they just want to buy into our system and introduce it to their sales team. And I always push back on it, because my thing is, before you do anything to introduce this to your team, let's actually make sure you personally, whoever's overseeing that sales team, go through the training, that you test out, get certified, that you make sure that this is something you are 100% on board with and understand clearly, and obviously get the training on how to implement it. Because again, you have to be able to lead by example. It's like trying to coach any team when you yourself don't know the playbook at all. Like, before you're going to coach and command your team, you first got to learn the plays. You got to believe in it. You got to be able to execute it. Now you can lead by example, because if leadership's not all in themselves on educating themselves on what this is and how it works,
they're going to have very terrible and more often than not unfavorable results introducing it to their team.
I agree 100%. And that is very, very, very important and a key in success. And we cannot work with businesses or with business owners that are not willing to invest the time that after we're done with the documentation to actually go through the documentation. I cannot work with a business owner and say, well, my team will handle it. There's no point, because if you're the head of the organization and you don't know what your policies and procedures and processes are, then how are we going to implement it? So that is key number one. But I said it very dramatically, but of course we work with the owners, we coach them, we work with them. We have, definitely our clients are very willing and successful. So it can be done. It's not a problem.
Well, again, you have proven results, and that was one of the things I was going to ask you since we're talking here. One thing I like asking all of our guests on our webinars is if they have a really good case study or success story of a company that came to you and maybe they're in a similar situation that those viewing, maybe they had some success, but they could tell things were just in shambles, things weren't organized, but once they implemented processes, the results were instantaneous and undeniable. So what's one that comes to your mind as like a good success story?
I'm going to tell you the story, and I know we have some slides, so hopefully you can show those. So it's, we have Chris, who is a painting contractor. I started working with Chris. The reason, he became a business owner, and I asked him, why did you become a business owner? Remember at the beginning I said, remember the time when you decided to become a business owner, when you were like, wow, this is what I'm going to create. He wanted control over his life and future. He wanted to have financial freedom. He wanted to spend time with his family. At this time, he only had one baby, and, he wanted to spend time with his newborn and his wife. He wanted to give back to the community. He was very involved in his church. It was very important to him to actually have more than just the business and the family. He wanted to give back. But then I told him, okay, so what happened? And he goes, okay, well, he found that he's doing all the estimates himself. He's running the crew. He's dealing with personnel issues. At that time, he had one crew. He's working in the field and painting himself. And he's trying to hire, but he's like, people quit and he's not successful. And, like he would try to hire somebody that said they were going to show up Monday morning, never show up. That I'm sure people encounter that,
Yeah, I mean, the turnover, you just hear that it's such a pain point for everyone. And everyone's trying to find the secret sauce. How do I retain people? How do I retain people? And probably never occurs to them that maybe it's the documented and proven processes and systems that I have instead of just winging it, shooting from the hip. It's like... It
is, and honestly, the answer to that, I know I'm going to continue talking about Chris, but it's also something that we did with him. So on the hiring, here's my response. Okay, obviously we need a good hiring process, and we can help with that because we work with hundreds of companies, and I know what a good hiring process is. All of my consultants, we know we can look at that, audit that, and help you with hiring processes in ways that maybe you didn't look at before. So that's one. Number two is because you have processes and procedures, you are less anxious, less in fear of hiring the wrong person, and then what will happen. You just have to hire, and if it doesn't work out, you find somebody else. If it doesn't work out, find somebody else. But if you have a good hiring process and you're never afraid of not being able to let go of bad employees because it's not a problem for you to train, you see that there will, how it is when you are like in sales, like when you are like desperate for your you didn't sell anything for 8 weeks and you're gonna about to get fired, you're like all stressed out. But if you have many sales and you're confident in yourself, okay, fine. So you're going there, you don't care if you're gonna close or not, you're probably gonna close. It's all in a state of mind, right? So that's number two. Yeah. And number three, and many of my clients have done it, especially since the pandemic, is you have to create processes and procedures enough to train somebody that maybe they're not from the trade, but you are teaching them the trade. And that is a key component as well. And we've created many of those manuals, including, videos, etc., because then you can take maybe somebody that hasn't been in a call center before, but they have a good personality. Yeah. And that's another thing that one of my clients said. Now they're hired for culture and personality, and they can train because they have the training material, not somebody that comes with experience. But
that's such a hot topic in sales, because a lot of people have bad luck hiring people that have extensive sales background in this industry. It actually backfires because along with that comes a lot of bad habits and bad attitudes, and they're hard to train and coach and mold into following a process, right? Whereas my preference is taking someone green and hungry and ambitious that's not necessarily from within this industry and maybe not necessarily has sales experience, but has a great attitude and work ethic. You know, I've had success with veterans, people that have military background, people that were in law enforcement or in the fitness industry that not necessarily were involved in sales, but they developed skills, mental fortitude, gratitude, things like that. They love process, they love procedure, they're disciplined. And if you have the right process in place, they latch onto those things and their level of execution is amazing. So I definitely
That's amazing.
agree.
Now that you're saying that, I'm thinking like somebody military, law enforcement, fitness, it's the common denominator is also that they like to serve people, so they are interested in people, so they want to help because that's really what you're doing as a salesperson. Yeah, but that's a different topic. We can talk. I'd love to. We'll also talk about sales processes and all that.
Yeah,
But
there's so much. Yeah.
so let's go back to Chris. Okay, what happened? All right. So I found when we started working with us, he was burned out. He was about to just quit. He had no time to spend with his family. And he really had that burden, as I was talking at the beginning, of the responsibility of the fate of 5 other families that he was responsible for.
Yeah.
So what did we do with him? Start working with him. And we went through the process like I was telling you. I asked him, what area of the company, if you had well-documented processes and procedures, will get you the biggest return on your investment? And he basically says sales and estimating, because he was running around town trying to figure it out. So basically we documented his estimating procedure, but we also streamlined it, so we implemented software. He didn't have any software, that was really able to track the leads and follow up, because we know that follow-up is so important. So he was just losing sales left and right. And then we helped him hire an office manager to manage those leads and estimates, and created the processes and procedures for her. It was all documented. So then he could see that there is a method to the madness, but there is also things that he can delegate. So he doesn't have to do the follow-up himself or sending the estimate himself, because the office manager can help him. So that's part of the optimization. And then we work with her to actually implement it. Then we move to operations. So we identify the key positions in the field, like who does he really have? We created job descriptions for each one, so they understand exactly what they do, and also Chris understands what they do and how to delegate. We documented their procedures. We identified and we optimized it. We trained them on the procedures. I mean, all the way for, I can show you what we wrote for him. It was beautiful. We even have picture of how to, how do you start a job, like a checklist for a job to start the beginning of the day, with a picture of how everything needs to be organized. Then when you end a job, this is how it has to be organized. Remember, we talked about the risk mitigation and customers being upset. That ended. Customers stopped being upset about, why did I leave my job site so dirty and whatever. No, it's all was checklisted, right?
Well, I just can't help but think, as you're explaining all this high-level, professionally outlined details of how a successful project must be orchestrated and organized, that's actually a valuable sales tool, right? If I'm at a customer's house and I'm explaining how we work, how we operate as a business, and I'm outlining our proven process for how a successful installation experience takes place, what a fantastic way to build trust and credibility at the kitchen table, even just having these processes outlined. It's amazing. Yeah.
We actually did it. That's a very good point. We did it with one of our clients. He's a remodeler, and we basically, what he did, he took some of the, high level, he didn't show all of the processes, but he took one of the checklists, laminated it. So when he was presenting to a new client, he showed me, see, this is a checklist of everything that we do. When we finish at the end of the day, they go like, wow, that's
absolute gold.
amazing.
Yeah, it's gold in the home. Any of that stuff is profound. People really appreciate that. So
yeah, for sure. So then what we did with Chris, after we've done all of that, we also identified the key metrics to measure success of his operations. So then he can actually figure out, because remember, one of the things, the challenges that people face, that contractors or home improvement contractors face, is how do I know what's actually happening? How do I keep my knowledge into everything that is happening without actually being present? So the key metrics is definitely important. So then as a result of it, he was able to delegate responsibilities to his foreman. So we hired a foreman, and he was able to get out of the field completely, where he was not, he didn't need to wear his whites and paint. He was actually able to wear regular clothes. That was like a joke between him and his wife, because his wife always wanted him to not paint anymore and actually not have to wear his whites and paints. Anyway, so he was able to grow his business and really become a very successful contractor, take the business out of the home, because now we had 2 kids. They needed their home without having the office there. You know, he bought the vans that he needed, the equipment that he needed, and he provided for more work for the people, and he had more time. And it was definitely, you know, he basically gained the freedom he was looking for and the financial benefits that come with it.
Yeah, I was just on a podcast recently, and I was talking about the secret to happiness, right? And I forget where I saw this quote from, but it really resonated with me. I didn't make this up, but it's like, the secret to happiness is freedom, right? And what's the secret to freedom? Well, a lot of people say the secret to freedom is courage. Like, unless we had some courage in our life at some point in history, we probably wouldn't have freedom or liberty to do as we please, do what we want to do. Well, where does courage come from? Well, courage comes from knowledge, and knowledge is truly power. So, you know, having all this information documented, having all this knowledge and wisdom, so it's trainable and duplicatable, provides the courage and freedom so you can live a happy, abundant life. And again, work on your business, not in your business, like Chris. I think that's a great example of that.
And I think Dominic is spot on. The courage, you have to have courage to do what your client did when they were basically putting $1 million.
To take that leap of faith, it takes courage, right?
It takes courage for a contractor to say, you know what? I need to take time out of my busy day and the time of my staff to actually be able to systematize, so then I can grow my business after that. It does take courage, I agree. And then the knowledge is important, because then your employees can have the courage. Like, you know, when you're a salesperson, you have to have courage. Like, if you're sitting in front of a client and you need to actually cut the deal or do whatever you need to do, you sometimes need to make a decision that you can come back to your office and, you know, your neck is a little bit on the line, but you have to have courage. But if you have the knowledge of what is acceptable and what is not acceptable, what is your freedom, like how much can you give or can you not give, then it's fine.
Yeah, I'm a firm believer in that, because, you know, for me personally, mastering a system and a process gave me the courage to pursue a life of freedom and abundance and happiness, you know. So for me, I'm a firm believer in that, and that's essentially what you provide, is you provide all this documentation, all these proven processes, the systems, optimization, knowledge, expertise. I mean, people don't know what they don't know, and that's the reality of life. You know, we're so caught up, you know, we're so deep in the weeds that we can't see the whole forest, you know. It's like, so having someone like you in their corner to map this out so they can see the big picture of where they're going, so they can live their American dream or their version of their dream, I think is truly special, and it's definitely needed in our industry. As I said in my little introduction at the beginning of this webinar, it's a very fragmented industry, very much a wild, wild west. You know, whether somebody used to be a salesperson, they used to door knock, maybe they used to be an installer, and now they have this bright idea they're going to run a business. Well, that's great. You have skills you can bring to the table, but there's a billion other things that these owners get thrown into, these challenges and obstacles, and unless you have somebody that is extremely organized and professional and has the experience to help, you know, translate the method to the madness and help get everything where it needs to be, that's why a lot of companies crash and burn.
That's true. And, you know, it might sound very idealistic, but it's so true for me. It's like, the reason why I do what I do really is because I do believe that this is the foundation for our for a strong economy and for our economy. You know, people have to stay in the trades. They have to be like contractors, builders, very important. I mean, any business owner, right? But we have to, it's providing future and it's providing stability. And it's really important to me to see people thrive and do well. And that is what gets me going. I even yesterday I was talking to one of my clients after I haven't talked to them. We finished the project a year ago, and they're maintaining themselves, the processes and procedures. And I always like to follow up with my clients. I want to see what happened. I want to make sure that they're actually doing what they're supposed to be doing. And he told me like this amazing story, like how he's so different than when I met him when we started the project 2 years ago. He was wearing all the hats. He doesn't anymore. He told me all the people that he managed to hire. He told me like how he is able to let go and delegate and let them run their show. And he goes, I realize what I'm not good at. I realize what I'm good at. And I'm just letting people that enjoy doing what they're doing, do it. And he was such a different person because he was so stressed out, and now he's relaxed, calm, and looking at the future.
You can feel the weight like released off their shoulders, right? They can find they're walking different probably. I imagine like their posture, yeah.
I was like, wow, this is amazing.
Yeah, well, obviously a lot of amazing content, and Lord knows we can talk for literally hours about all this stuff. But if someone wants to get in contact with you to set up your 30-minute process mapping conversation, if they want to take a deeper dive and to get the ball rolling, to get systematized, because I think what you're offering could not be more timely, especially because nowadays exit strategy and private equity and all this stuff is a big hot topic. If that's sincerely a goal of yours to create legacy wealth, to one day be able to exit, you got to ask yourself, can I truly exit and my business continue on as usual, right? If the answer is no, then this is definitely not optional, in my opinion, that you do this. And to your point earlier, the case study, how much more valuable will your business be when these different PE firms get in a bidding war over your company? Not necessarily a fixer-upper business, but a hit-the-road running type of business where everything is like laser-focused, dialed in, organized, and optimized. I mean, that is highly attractive. But how do we get the process started, Adi?
Okay, so there is a slide with a QR code, so just scan it and put it and get on my calendar, and I'll be happy to talk to you. I do a 30-minute, I call it process mapping free. It's a complimentary free process mapping. And what we do there is I can map like an overall picture of your business. I can explain how it is to work with me. I can answer any questions that you have about processes. And it depends, really identify where your business is at on the cycle of processes and how we can help. So you can scan the QR code, get on my calendar. I'll be happy to talk to you. And you can also text us at 503-662-2911. You can call or text, but I know people like to text. So 503-662-2911 and ask for a free consultation, and we'll get back to you and schedule it. Of course, we have our website, and you're going to have all this information, but I think those are the two easiest places to reach us.
100%. Well, again, we understand one of the most valuable things that everyone has is time. So Adi, I first want to thank you for taking so much time to provide this world-class education. This webinar was fantastic. Of course, I want to thank all the viewers. We don't take this lightly. Thank you for taking time out of your day to listen to us. Hopefully you took away a lot of useful information that you can put to work for you right away. And please, we encourage you, you don't have to go at this alone. It can seem like a daunting, overwhelming thing. Adi and her team can make this very easy for you. They do all the heavy lifting, and it's not their first rodeo. They can make this a very streamlined and smooth process to get your business where it needs to be. Get things optimized, get things documented. You deserve to have the right to either stay in a business that doesn't stress you out, you can work on, or if it's your vision to exit one day and create legacy wealth for yourself and your family. A wise man once told me, sometimes we got to begin with the end in mind, right? So think about what your vision is for your future and how to get there. And I think, to me, this is a not optional proposition here, is to get everything documented, get things processed, get all the systems in place. And now you're in a position where you can scale profitably. That's the key. Profits for sanity, right? And those of you that know, we're having our GOGI Growth and Profitability Summit November 14th and 15th in Amelia Island. Of course, Adi and her team will be there. I'm going to ask her to also speak on some of this subject matter because I think it's one of the most important things that people need to hear and understand. And they also have some complimentary tickets available. So if you want to come to our event, get with Business Success Consulting Group. We'll put the QR code on the screen as well. They're going to have their own exclusive promo code where you can actually get a complimentary ticket from them to come to our event. That carries over a $1,900 value, so do not pass that up. And again, we appreciate your endurance here, but stick around. We're going to open it up for 5 minutes of live Q&A after this pre-recording. If you have specific questions on any of the subject matter that we covered today, Adi's going to make herself available to answer those questions for you live. And I just want to thank you so much once again, Adi. Fantastic information. Again, we love the partnership, and we look forward to seeing where this grows over time.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Dominic.
Thank you so much. And as always at GRA University, yes, you are a closer.